Okay, so we are back here in the words of Rabbi Tatz, trying to figure out how the individual BECHIRA of someone could affect another person. And we said actually a very powerful statement last time, which begins to answer a lot of questions that we have. And that is that a person who's not a spiritual giant does not have the power to affect somebody with their personal decisions in life. And this goes very good into things that we've said before. I spoke about it on Shabbos as well in the drasha this week, that the famous words of the Sefer HaChinuch that we saw together, that the reason that you're not allowed to take revenge against somebody, and the reason you're not allowed to bear a grudge against somebody, is because you have to acknowledge that everything that's happening in one's life is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's decision that this is going to happen in your life. And this person over here is just a tool, he's just a vehicle in the hands of Hashem to bring about Hashem's bidding. So then why did it happen? Why did it happen to me? It didn't happen to somebody else. So the Sefer HaChinuch over there says, because we have to examine our own deeds. We're not such tzaddikim, I'm sorry to inform all of us, we're not such righteous people that we've done so many amazing things that we're going to be protected from the troubles of this world, but rather we all have sins that we are carrying around with us, shortcomings and faults and deficiencies in our character and our mitzvahs and our averas, and therefore Hashem sometimes brings about a reactionary way that He deals with us because of something that we did triggered the response, and therefore we are suffering through whatever it is that we have to suffer through. Someone looks like he's the perpetrator. He's not really the perpetrator. He's just the one that Hashem is using to bring about this message. So that's what the Rabbi Tatz is saying over here. He said, if you want to be able to claim that somebody's BECHIRA is what hurt you and affected your life, then you're acknowledging that this person must be a very great, lofty spiritual giant. And that's hard to say. Meaning, in the story of the Chumash, when we have Yosef and his brothers, the reason that Reuven was afraid that the brothers would be able to affect Yosef and kill him if they wanted to is because they were all tzaddikim. Now, I know tzaddikim don't act in such a way where they want to kill their own brother. We'll leave that on the side right now. But they were righteous people. And therefore, Reuven knew that since that they're all together in this, so their power of righteousness, of greatness, of spiritual dominance, could end up overpowering Yosef, and they could end up killing Yosef. But in a regular case, when we're dealing with regular people over here, somebody once hurt me very badly, and I was speaking to one of my Rabbi about it. I was surprised by what was going on. And I said, how could this person do such a thing to me? So he said, do you think that person has power to do something to you? I don't think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would give that person the ability to hurt you because they're not on that level that their actions could affect somebody else. So don't look at the person. You have to look at yourself. And that's what Tatz is saying over here. A person has to look at themselves because the person that's coming from the outside in, most likely they're not a tzaddik, they're not righteous, they're not so great, and therefore they don't have the power to override, quote unquote, override the ultimate plan that Hashem had in this world.
So you think you were warranted that upset? You felt that you deserved that?
So again, what I'm a perfect person? Yeah, Victor, I'll give you my laundry list of all the things that I have to work on. And that's just the laundry list. If you want the full list, I'll give you the full list, but we'll be here for a very long time.
I'll get your washer.
And what?
I'll get your washer.
Okay, so but that's the point. That's the point. And something else as well that's a little bit beyond what it says over there in the Sefer HaChinuch is that sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He sees inside of us the dormant koiches, the potential that we're not using. And sometimes the only way that he can pull out that dormant strength and abilities and potential is by putting us into a situation which will force us to dig deeper inside of ourselves and bring out potential and abilities that we never knew that we had before. So sometimes I'm going to have to go through a situation that's going to force me into using my emunah in a way that I never did before. It'll force me into bitachon like I never had before. It'll force me to work on myself and my patience and my understanding of the world and so on and so forth, and my allegiance to Hashem and this Torah. It'll force me to do that. So whether it's because of my sins, or whether it's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu he wants more out of me. So right, why does it say in the Chumash, it says that most of the matriarchs, they were born without the ability to be able to have children. When it says over there that Sarah didn't have a child because she was an akara, she was barren, it means that she was one of the women that would have had to go to an organization today for fertility treatments because she simply could not have a child. Her body was not wired to have children. Rivka, Rachel, they were not wired to have children. Hashem made a nace in the end, and He converted their bodies, and the bodies going to have children. Why? Because they daven to Hashem. Say Chazal, what does Hashem do that for? Because Hashem loves the prayers of the tzaddikim. Why does He love the prayers of the tzaddikim? Like, they say, wow, it sounds so good. No, because when a tzaddik has to pray for something, they bring out more of the righteousness inside of them. They bring out more of the potential that's there inside. They make themselves into a greater person. Hashem likes the greatness of the Jewish people. So sometimes He puts us in a situation to make us greater. So, says Rav Tatz, you see somebody who's hurting you? They're not hurting you. This would not be happening unless HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to happen. Who is this person? They're nothing. Again, nothing in the scheme of the entire universe, in the scheme of Hashem's world, compared to the tzaddikim of our generation, they're nothing. So how could they affect you? How could they hurt you? They can't. That must mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that planned it. Now, we did mention before that Hashem is megalgal in chayiv al yedei chayiv, which means that He will bring bad things through bad people. So this person might be a bad person. They might be an ingrate, they might be a horrible person, they might be someone that's insidious, and so on and so forth. And therefore, they are the ones that Hashem is bringing this negative thing in your life through. They were chosen as the tool that Hashem is going to use to bring about something bad to you. So that's their problem, and they're going to have to deal with that between them and Hashem, that they find such bad favor in the eyes of God that He used them as the vehicle that's going to bring about this thing that you're supposed to get. And they earned it because of all their terrible behavior beforehand. But did they actually hurt you? So he's saying, no, they didn't actually hurt you.
So when someone's life is taken, and like the friend that was just killed in Kappa, he was a tzaddik. I don't think that was it his time? Is there such a thing as it's your time?
Of course.
Now.
Yes.
So irrespective of if you've done mitzvahs your whole life, if it's your time, it's your time.
Right, meaning what we would say in that particular case is that this was a heavenly decree.
Yeah.
This was a heavenly decree, not that, oh my God.
But it's all heavenly.
So I don't know.
But everything is heavenly.
Yes, everything is heavenly decree, but again, when we see somebody go through something tragic like that, so that means that there was a heavenly decree, for whatever reason it was, on Rosh Hashanah of last year, when Hashem was judging everybody and their life. It's a very frightening thought. When Hashem was judging everybody and what's going to be for the up and coming year, He decided at that moment that there's going to be a time in this year that your friend is going to leave this world. How exactly, everything like that, we leave that up to Hashem. And why that neshama at that time and so on and so forth, we leave that up to Hashem. We can't, even again, Moshe Rabbeinu asked God, tell me Hashem, why do you do what you do? How do you do what you do? And Hashem said, even you, Moshe, who can speak to me panim al panim, face to face, even you will not be able to understand why I do. And if I begin to reveal to you the way in which I run the world, nobody can see me v'chai and live. You'll have to die on the spot. So it's impossible for the human mind to be able to grasp the profundity of Hashem's decisions and the way that He acts with people in this world. So one thing we do see, and that is that there's people, there's their free will, and there's the way that God runs the world, and we have to know, and this is what's supposed to give us the chizuk over here to be able to deal with the situations and with Amunah, is that most people in the world, as bad as they look and as insidious as the crime is that they committed and what they did against us, they don't have the power to do such a thing. So then why does it look like they are? That's all part of the mirage that Hashem creates in this world, which forces us to struggle with our emunah to be able to find Hashem. If everything was easy, there would be no struggle. And there would be no hard work, there would be no effort that we have to put in. Your relationship would be very minimal between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But everybody knows the more that you have to work on something, the harder you have to make the effort to invest and find Hashem and work on that emunah, the deeper is the bond that you're going to have with the Rebbeinu Shalom.
Does it have to be so hard?
What?
Throughout history, the Jewish people.
Yes, it does. It does. There's no choice. Just like everybody knows, if you really want to get into shape, so you're going to have to work hard. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to work. You have to work hard. And if people go through, the yo-yos of exercise, a few months, a few years, they work hard. They get to that place where they want to be, and the next thing, 8 months later, you see the guy. What happened to you? Whatever. I remember I had a friend who lost a ton of weight. The guy was guarding himself. He was eating barely any. He lost, I don't know, it was 80 pounds, something like that. And one day we were in a certain shul, and I see him go and grab some cookies. And I told him, don't start. It's I lost so much weight. He went down 4 or 5 suit sizes. Don't worry about it. I said, trust me. I'm the man that's been on a diet since I'm 5 years old. Okay? I know the scales, how it works. Don't start. It's okay. It's one bite. One bite. Then he went back and another bite. Today he's back in his old suits. Yeah? Because that's how it works. You work and you work and you work. And if you're not constantly working, it falls apart.
But that's an individual. I'm talking about a whole people.
Yes.
Throughout history.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna get to the people. He's gonna speak about this. Okay, we're gonna get there. Okay, the next thing is like this, and he says, individuals and not groups. There's individuals and not groups. The freedom to place another in a situation of danger applies only where a Baal BECHIRA, someone who has the ability to make decisions, is targeting an individual and not a group. Now what does that mean? That means that one individual person cannot affect masses. He could only affect, if he would have the ability, he could only affect individuals. So the Vilna Gaon says like this: Kasher yesh gezer al kavutza, if there is a gezer, there's a decree over a group of people, gam adam prati she'en alei gezer kezu yochel yinazeh kechelik mimenu. Says the Vilna Gaon a little bit, saying a little different than this, and he's saying that an individual could only affect another individual. He cannot affect the group. But if there's a gezer, if there's a decree, a heavenly decree on a group of people, even if the individual per se does not deserve the punishments that's coming to the group, he can get schlepped in, he can get grouped in together with the group as well, and therefore he's going to suffer the same fate as the group, which is really what the next thing that he quotes is. The Gemara says, "Kevan shenasim v'shus lamashchis shuv einoi mavchin bein tzadik l'rasha." Now you might ask yourself, this person, you look at some of the horrific crimes that were committed against the Jewish people over history, and you see that there were righteous and not righteous, and the righteous got killed together with the not righteous. And you ask yourself, how could it be that in the Holocaust there's pictures of the Nazis humiliating Rabbanim, ripping off their payas, shaving down their beards, beating them in public, and killing them, beating them to a pulp in front of everybody, hanging them in front of the masses? How could they do such things? Matzah tzaddik. So the answer is that once that Hashem gives permission to the destroying agents, so to speak, to come and wipe out a certain place, a certain region, a certain amount of people, that destroying agent does not distinguish between tzaddik and Russia. He just given permission. That's why you find by the night of the Makas Bechoros, the death of the firstborn in Egypt, all the Jews had to stay inside their house. And they had to put the blood on the doors. Now, in every other plague that there was, the Jews were walking around freely, and they were, what lice is coming down, they're walking around, they're standing right next to the Egyptian, the lice goes to the Egyptian, doesn't touch the Jew. There were boils, the boils go to the Egyptian, doesn't touch the Jew. By every other one of the Makkahs, every other plague, the Jews are walking around, no worries, everything's happening to the Egyptians. How come by this plague of the death of the firstborn, they have to hide in their house, they have to put the blood on the door, and they can't go out into the middle of the night? Because the Gemara says, once that Hashem gives permission to the destructive agent to go and destroy, he doesn't make a distinction. So even though the Jews would not have deserved to have been killed on that night, because they're the Jews, they're not the Egyptians, if they would have been in harm's way, they would have died also. And therefore they had to stay away from everything. So that means there's a special form of conduct affecting masses under certain conditions. So that's also, it's not an individual that's doing anything. Paro is not doing anything to the Jews. As we're going to see, we'll see that it's Hashem making heavenly decrees upon the masses. And that's the next thing that he says over here. It says, but what about by war? So it says, Milchama Isani Asisi, I made the wars, says Hashem. I make the wars, which means wars are subject to this operation of special divine intervention and direction. Wars. It looks like Hitler, Yimach Shemo, is doing what he's doing. It looks like Paro is destroying the Jewish people. It looks like Haman and Achashverosh are getting together and they want to wipe out the Jews. That's what it looks like. It looks like Hamas is doing what they do. It looks like it. But you have to know, he writes over here, that the wars and the battles that are fought and the things that are going to go down in this world on the Jewish people, that's all with special divine oversight and intervention and direction that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving. And further he writes, Leiv Melachim b'yad Hashem, the heart of the kings is in the hand of Hashem. And that means that kings and major political figures who occupy positions of dominion over the masses and history, their power is always in line with a greater plan. Meaning they look like they have power on their own. They don't have power on their own. The heart of the kings is in the hand of Hashem. Which means that Hashem is the one manipulating all the things that are going on, because there is, as he calls it over here, it's a march towards humanity's destiny that's greater than the sum of the parts played by its individual agents. Hashem has a master plan. We can't understand. If Hashem, you love us so much, why would you make pogroms and have Cossacks running around in the streets beheading Jewish? Why would you do that, Hashem? If you love us so much, why would you make an inquisition where you thrust us out of the land of Spain, where we ourselves, the Jewish people, were part of the prosperity and the blessing that was taking place over there? They should have been idolizing us. Why would you send us out into exile and we ended up strewn all over the world? Hashem has a master plan. Do I know the master plan? I know one thing. Hashem wants Mashiach to come. That means all of these cogs in the wheel, all the different moving parts, is all to bring about the ultimate goal that we want in this world, is that there's going to be a Mashiach and the world's going to reach fruition. Why does so much suffering have to happen? At the end, when Mashiach will come and the veil is pulled up from this world, we'll be able to see what was going on. In the meantime, there's plans, and all those individual kings and political figures and war heroes that look like they're the ones pulling the strings down here in this world, it's not really them. Hashem is the one that's orchestrating everything in the hearts. And he ends off with these words. He says, there's a common thread that we find in all these things which we are referring to as the limiting factors of one's personal free will. And that is, number one, no human has the freedom to affect the conduct of the world at large. That's one thing you have to know. There's not a single person in this world, no matter how great they are, that can affect the entirety of mankind. That must mean that if they did, whoever was in the lab in Wuhan, China, and released the COVID gene into this world, and ended up closing off the entire world for months and months on end, and millions of people got killed. So you might say, well, that whichever one of those scientists it was that released it from the lab, so you see that one man actually could destroy the entire world. No, he can't, because if Hashem didn't want it to happen, it would not have happened. So he might be the scientist, he might be the ones that are doing all of the scientific study that's going on over there and all the experimental stuff that they were learning, but at the end of the day, Hashem is the one that released the COVID virus into the world and brought the world down to its knees and couldn't do anything for months on end. And Hashem exposed himself that he's the master of the universe. Now, at the end of the day, unfortunately, I don't think anybody really learned the lesson because COVID is way behind us and everything's back to normal right now. And everybody thinks it's yadi once again, it's my might, it's me, I'm going to do everything. But Hashem had to teach the world a lesson. And unfortunately, the lesson probably was not learned the way that it was supposed to be, which is frightening because Hashem always teaches the world lessons. If we get the message, so then he can move on. If we don't get the message, then God forbid. But that's one thing. Number one, nobody can affect the entire conduct of the world. Number two, the course of history moves steadily towards its conclusion, even though it's concealed. We don't understand what's going on. And no individual has the power to deflect that process. You can't stop. If Hashem has something that he wants to happen, you're not going to get in the way and stop it. I remember when I was in college up north, so it was in the woods over there, and there were huge redwood trees. And the college was planning on knocking out a few acres of land over there because they wanted to build a new building. So what did these silly people do? They went and they chained themselves to the trees. Don't take down the trees. We want the trees to stand. Trees are more important than the pursuit of knowledge and people getting jobs and everything. So they were able to block and deflect the bulldozers for a while, but eventually they had to leave, and then the bulldozers came in and they plowed it down. So nobody could deflect the process that Hashem is the wheels moving in. Maybe you'll slow things down at a certain point. Maybe you get in the way. But if Hashem wants something to be done, nothing's going to get in his way. And the large-scale events of history reflect more than a summation of individual lives. Meaning, you look, there's this perpetrator and this victim, and it went like that. That's what it looks like. That's just the image that we see in front of us. Nevertheless, there's a higher energy that's driving everything. And that we have to keep in mind. The way that we're learning it up until this point right now is that although it looks like individuals could affect life and mankind and the world and so on and so forth, at the end of the day, you have to know that Hashem's the one that's pulling all the strings. Hashem's the one that's manipulating everything because he has a plan, and nothing is going to get in the way of the ultimate plan of Hashem.
So we should be grateful for all the bad things that
No.
It's Hashem's work.
We're not grateful for the bad because it means that we deserved it. Meaning,
He seems to think we deserve it.
yes,
So then we should be.
but we're not grateful. Meaning, I would have been more grateful. I would have just done tshuva on my own. If I would have repented, I would have become a better person on my own. Hashem doesn't. There's no parent that wants to punish their kid that their kids should learn the lesson. I'd much rather that if I speak to my kids and I speak to them maturely and I explain to them this and that, and then they understand and so they behave in a better way. As a parent, I would much rather see that than having to punish the kid, send him off to his room without dinner that night, or give him a potch, or take away his favorite toy. I'd much rather do it in a more peaceful way. So Hashem would much rather have the world run in peace. That's when Mashiach will come. It's going to be a peaceful world. He'd much rather the world run where the Jewish people wisen up and we take responsibility for our actions much more, and we do a better job than have to come and bring about difficulties. Okay. You're welcome.